Only the survivors of the Holocaust can know what life was like for a prisoner in a Nazi concentration camp. We can only imagine how people got through each day and how they managed to stay sane when surrounded by atrocities. Viktor Frankl, an Austrian psychiatrist and a survivor of the Holocaust, documented his experiences as a prisoner in concentration camps during the World War II. These experiences led Frankl to the conclusion that in order to thrive and in most difficult situations survive, we need to discover our meaning of life. Today we explore how prisoners survived through the horrifying experiences of the Holocaust and how it can help you find meaning in your life. The survivors of the Holocaust went through three distinct psychological stages. Newly arrived prisoners could not manage the intensely emotional experience of watching other prisoners being punished in the most brutal ways. Confronted with grotesque brutality, they soon lost their hope and began to see death as some kind of relief. Some even considered suicide as a way out of this misery. After a few days in the camp, prisoners fell into a state of apathy. They became emotionally dull. Prisoners in the second phase no longer felt disgust or pity as they gazed at the corpses. Instead, they saw an opportunity to grab leftover food, shoes, or any other clothing items from the prisoners who died during a typhus outbreak. For them, there was no excitement for the future. There was not even a future. Most prisoners thought their lives were already over. They gave up living as there were no goals to reach. The prisoners who were lucky enough to survive the concentration camps had to face a new challenge after their release. They had spent such a long time in the camps that living a normal life became very difficult. Immediately after their release, the prisoners were unable to grasp their freedom. Having dreams so often of freedom, they found it unreal when it finally became a reality. Unfortunately, many prisoners came home only to find that their families had been killed and their towns turned into rubble. They could not experience pleasure or joy. While returning to a normal life was not easy for the liberated prisoners, after a while, most of them managed to enjoy their lives once more and be happy that they had survived the Holocaust. The survival of the prisoners depended on where they placed their focus. For some, imagining their loved ones and reminiscing about the past made it possible to mentally escape the terror and brutality of their environment. Love could bring them fulfillment. Those who were able to find at least a bit of happiness in their memories were often better able to survive than the others. Some prisoners found comfort by immersing themselves in nature and peaceful sunset, while others decided to live up to high moral standards by sharing their food or helping other prisoners. In our modern world, people focus on money, status, power, and pleasure rather than a meaningful life. But according to Frankl, these pursuits are consequence of a lack of meaning, only cheap substitutes for what truly matters. The most important force in a man's life is his desire to find meaning. According to Frankl, success is the unintended side effect of one's dedication to a more significant cause. The more we care about success, the less we can focus on our cause, and the less likely success will occur. But if we dedicate ourselves to a purpose and don't care about success, the more likely it will happen. People need meaning in their lives in order to have something to look forward to. The prisoners who managed this meaning survived the Holocaust. Frankl claims that there are three ways to find meaning in life. The first is the way of achievement or accomplishment. Creative pursuits like writing a book, painting, sharing stories about our suffering and life experiences. When you feel like you need to prepare for a task that you and only you can do, life feels meaningful. This way of living serves life a meaning because the person would not wanna die unless he has accomplished his dreams. So building something great gives life a meaning till the very end. The second way of finding meaning in your life is by experiencing something such as nature, beauty, culture, or by experiencing love. According to Viktor Frankl, love is elevating people around you. It is being with the sick parents so they can find the strength to live another day. The decision to look for beauty and nature or help others in need gave prisoners a purpose to survive. The more one forgets himself by giving himself to a cause to serve or another person to love, the more human he is and the more he actualizes himself. By the attitude we take toward unavoidable suffering, a good life is based on a certain level of pain. People who deny the inevitability of suffering actually suffer the most. The prisoners who did suicide didn't see any meaning in their suffering. They gave up on life. But the prisoners who survived gave meaning to their suffering. They labeled suffering as a challenge, not a hindrance. We cannot avoid suffering, but we can choose to cope with it, find meaning in it, and move forward. Going through the horrifying experiences of the camp, Viktor Frankl concluded that there's always a reason to live, even in the worst conditions. There is always meaning in suffering, and if we can grasp this meaning, we can overcome even the most painful situations. According to Frankl, the spiritual freedom we have, which cannot be taken away, makes life meaningful. For example, the prisoners in the concentration camps who were able to maintain a purpose in life did so based on the choices that they made. Those who survived and those who didn't were all responsible for their life choices. While a man's destiny in life is certainly affected by the circumstances in which he finds himself, he is ultimately free to choose his attitude towards life. So regardless of how terrible life is, we still can and must decide in what direction we go. The meaning of life can never be defined vividly. It has to be reinvented depending on the situations you find yourself in. Take chess, for example. What is the best move in chess? Well, there is simply no such thing as the best or even a good move, apart from a particular situation in the game. The same holds for human experience. In your 20s, your purpose for living can be chasing your dreams, but as you grow old, it can change toward building a healthy family. So what matters is the meaning of a person's life at a given moment.